All right, guys, at the end of 2022, there's one person that comes to mind that we wanted to join us to give us a little bit of Christmas cheer and look over what was a historic year in the sport of MMA. You know her from her ESPN analyst and reporter work. You know her from her one-on-one show and, of course, Dana White's Contender Series. It's a pleasure to have this person join us as our last guest for the year. Laura Sanko, welcome to, I suppose this is the end of year Submission Radio Christmas special. Ho, welcome to the program.
I feel incredibly honored right now. I have to tell you that because, generally you save the best for last, but I feel like, perhaps in this instance, you save the least busy on a Sunday for last, but I will take it.
Come on.
No, I think you're the perfect person to kind of bring everything together, make everybody feel good. I think best for last definitely applies here. Look, unless Conor McGregor responds to our 6,000 DMs for the last 9 years, I think we're good. I think we're best for last. I want to ask, you've covered so many events, you've done so much phenomenal work. So, kind of on a personal level, what fights and sort of things stand out for you in terms of like what was the most meaningful event for you personally this year? Forget about the fighters, the events, the marquee, the results. For you, what was the most meaningful event?
Well, for me personally, Contender Series, the entire season is always going to be the most personally rewarding. And I feel like that show is a little bit my baby. I has Dane's name on it, but, I in my mind, I always scratch that out and put Laura Sanko.
Yeah.
Don't tell him. But in terms of like UFC fight cards, for me, it really was UFC 280. Not just because of the how big the fights were, though. There's something really satisfying about a really challenging situation for me personally, and being in Abu Dhabi and having to call the road to UFC and do the weigh-in. Like, I had so many jobs that weekend, and then to have these enormous fights and just, everything is different over there. The logistics are crazy. So in a weird way, when covering the fights itself, when my assignments themselves are more difficult, they're even more rewarding when they're over with. But the fights themselves were incredible. Seeing Islam Makhachev win in Abu Dhabi and just the reaction from fans was unreal.
I feel like Fight Island's crazy, and because it comes together and it's so seamless, people don't understand sometimes all the crazy things that happen like backstage and everything that goes into it. What was the hardest part of like Abu Dhabi for you?
The heat. It's always the heat. And I know that sounds stupid because like the fights are in an air-conditioned arena, but I'll say the heat and the time difference. Again, it kind of makes me sound like a pansy in terms of like, high maintenance or whatever. But for me, it's so challenging to be on and to have my brain functioning at optimum levels when I'm sleep deprived. And I really don't know how someone like John Anik does such an incredible seamless job doing what he does, because he's got 10 times the workload that I do, and he just makes it look so effortless. But it's so hot there that it's really, really difficult to describe to people. And we were there in October. The time that we were there in July, I legit thought, I don't know how people survive here. I don't. It's so humid.
Yeah, and then so one of the things that people don't understand is, because you make everything look so seamless, is when you're interviewing fighters, especially after the fights, and you do those quick interviews that you do that are awesome, it's so difficult because you don't have much time to take in what's just happened. The fighters are going into the back and they're like all sweaty and tired, and some of them are losing and some of them are winning, and you get your assignments on who you have to interview. Take us into, just quickly, because we'll talk about the year and Christmas and all that, but take us into that process. Like, what is the hardest thing for you in that moment? People don't understand as well that time difference too. You're in the middle of the night in different parts of the world most of the time.
And just like interviewing people while other things are happening, and you're supposed to be paying attention to those things and then talking about those things.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's inevitably, we start out the night in like a nice cadence where a fight will happen, and then there's roughly enough time, as long as there are no cuts and people don't need stitches. But as soon as someone needs stitches, the rest of the evening gets off. So what happens is I will be interviewing someone while the next important fight is going on. And you'll see me I try really hard not to do it, but you'll see me sometimes in the interviews look away slightly because my monitor is behind the guy I'm interviewing, and I'm very well aware that I have to interview this next guy and something crazy just happened. But that's kind of the nice thing about at least the quick hits version of backstage interviews that I do, is that they're meant to be a little bit more loose, and whatever happens, happens. And half the time when I'm interviewing a fighter and the whole arena starts just shaking and rocking, that fighter's going to look over and see what's happening too. So half the time our interview gets interrupted by, looking at the next fight with the fighter that just won. But that's definitely a challenge to do an interview on a fight I didn't see.
Yeah. I remember me and Casper used to cover the events. He'd be in the back doing the scrum, and then everybody would be watching the fight that's happening at the same time, including the guy doing the scrum. And it's just like, oh my God, this just happened.
Or you have to interview someone, like you're doing an interview, and then a fight happens, and then the next person comes, and you're like, I didn't watch that fight. I have no idea what happened. You're asking people what happened, like what was there to talk about, this and that. It's crazy unless you experience it.
Yeah, people don't realize how difficult it is to do that kind of stuff. But are you going to be in Perth, Laura?
I am not going to be in Perth. I'm
okay.
not.
What the fuck?
But that's another long journey. But I've got some exciting stuff brewing at home, so it's all good.
Awesome. All right, before we touch on some of the big things coming for you next year, just quickly, what's your favorite one? What's your favorite like quick hits interview that you did 2022?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Because if you stand out to me, I love that Nate Diaz one, but just tell us what
I was going to say. The Nate Diaz one was fantastic because I've never interviewed Nate when he was so just relaxed and happy and, not trying to, he never really like rehearses or is scripted. We all know that, but you can tell the difference between what's weighing on him coming into a fight versus after fight that he just won, and, all of the things that he had to look forward to after that big win. So that interview was hilarious, and he just would not freaking stand still. I kept having to grab him and shove him into the shot. What you don't see is there's like a group of his entourage of like 30 people packed into this room, all watching me do the interview. So that was a fun one. But another one that comes to mind was when I interviewed Izzy and Volk simultaneously. I can't remember where we were, but they were hammered, and it was absolutely great. Yeah, they came in with drinks, and they're like, "Oh, should we sit these down?" I was like, "No, you keep going. This will make for some good television."
That's awesome. That's the best part of it, because it's so like loosey goosey. That's where you get some of the most like best and classic moments. I wonder like who this year would be maybe a fighter that wasn't really on your radar who now is someone who might be sort of like a new favorite to follow.
I'm trying to think if I remember it. I mean, the name that always comes to mind, I get made fun of, but I'm trying to remember. I want to be accurate with my answer, so I'm trying to remember if I knew about him much in 2021. I want Shavkat Rakhmonov to be my answer to everything.
Yeah. Good answer.
I think that's a fair answer. He might have been on my radar, but barely in 2021. It might have been like, this will be an interesting guy to sort of, keep my eye on a little bit. But This year was the opened a lot of people's eyes, but it still not like the layers of the onion are starting to notice, but he still hasn't quite had that like real.
You wouldn't call him breakout fighter of the year, but he's on the cusp. Like 2022 might be his. It very likely will be.
Yeah, 2023 I think might be a really big year for him. There's a few others too that I think are going to really pop next year.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like it's kind of a changing of the guard going into 2023. Like there's a lot of young guys right on the cusp there that people don't realize are right there. And even when you look throughout all the divisions, you're really like, all right, like in this one, a lot of the young guys are coming through because there's a lot of opportunity. And others, you're like, might take a couple of years for them to break through. But one of the names, and we want to look at some of the big ones for 2022. One of the names I wanted to bring up with you, Laura, is Conor McGregor, because obviously this guy is someone where us as media all cover throughout the year. Now, he didn't actually fight in 2022. He's still recovering from his leg break against Dustin Poirier, but in the meantime, obviously, he's gotten huge. The division's kind of moved on from where he was when that break happened. Now, he's doing Roadhouse. He's kind of talking about coming back at different weight classes. I wonder, like, how do you look at 2022 for Conor McGregor, considering that he hadn't really fought and he's kind of been out of the game, but still so influential in so many ways?
Yeah, very influential and very, very talkative lately.
Yeah.
For Conor, I think we'll see him next year. I really do. At what weight class? Lordy. When people start talking about him fighting Paddy, although I like the idea conceptually, I mean, those two fighters as they are right now are like 3 weight classes different. So I don't I don't see that one happening anytime soon. Maybe it will. Who knows? I've been wrong before, but in terms of what weight class I think he would come in at, I mean, it's got to be at least 170. And then now he's talking about, going to 185. He looks like a middleweight. I mean, absolutely looks like a middleweight. He is yoked right now.
Yeah.
Yoked.
Yeah, I mean, the whole middleweight thing is crazy, right? Because I think from the outside looking in, you would think who would even be favorable at middleweight, right? I mean, he's talking about it like a 1 day kind of thing. I get it. It's almost like you can't knock the guy for having these, massive dreams. But at the same time, I think his frame is just not really built for a middleweight, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he looks like he has the thickness of a middleweight, but then when you know how tall he is in real life, he would be pretty undersized for that division. You look at guys like Izzy, even Cannonier and Strickland that we saw last night. I mean, he'd be pretty short to face those guys. I think 170, he'll be cutting hard to 170. I don't know what he walks around at right now, but I'm pretty good at guessing people's weights, and it's definitely over 200 pounds.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with McGregor because, he had an unbelievable run at featherweight, right? No one can deny that. One of the best featherweights to ever do it. Lightweight, he's obviously had success. He was the champion. He beat Eddie Alvarez. But there's this, I suppose, debate, and I guess maybe it's in my brain and a few other fans, that possibly he's one of those fighters that's caught in between divisions. Lightweight, in a lot of ways, even now, seems like it could be a little bit too big for him. Featherweight is too small for him. And welterweight, that's a tough division for him if he can get down to 170. I wonder, if you're Conor McGregor, how do you navigate that, especially with the fact that getting bigger, I almost feel like it's a detriment, right? Like, you lose the speed, you might gain some power, but the guys that you're fighting are just so skilled and so big in that division, 170, that it's almost like, how much weight can you lose? How much muscle can you lose? How can you go back to that speed that you had, that where he was kind of most effective?
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see, and I would love to know. I would love to know what his thinking was, because it doesn't make a ton of sense to me to put on that much bulk. Because part of his advantages were his, he was probably one of the best counter strikers we've ever seen in the UFC, and that takes timing, and that takes precision, and it takes speed, and it takes gas, because you have to still have that instantaneous reaction, in the later rounds. Putting on however many pounds of muscle he put on doesn't necessarily lend itself to that. I have no idea. And he's also talking about weight classes where there are a ton of wrestlers.
Yeah.
I wish I had a better answer for you that we could all go, oh wow, yeah, that's why he's doing it. That makes sense now. I don't have it. I don't have it.
I think. Oh, sorry, you go, Dennis.
Oh, I was just gonna say, you're mentioning wrestlers. Michael Chandler is obviously the name that's being thrown around. Like, it's far from confirmed, and who knows what's going to happen when he returns. But what do you think? How do you feel when you look at that matchup? Because for me, Michael Chandler, I'm like, all right, this is a guy that runs in there full speed. Maybe this is a guy that kind of could, use some of his power and his striking against, and potentially have a chance at winning against. But it's hard because when you go through the division, it's like, who could he beat? What could be a good fight for him? It's kind of hard to put someone with him. Maybe Tony Ferguson.
Do you think this being Chandler at 170 or 155?
It's a tough one. I feel like if you're Conor McGregor, and Casper, chime in here and tell me what you think, but I feel like if you're Conor McGregor, you're struggling to get down to 155. You get a guy who's a 155 to move up to 170 for you. Maybe, he's a little bit slow. Maybe Chandler's slower at 170. So maybe it is 170.
I think that's what it would be. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Casper.
I was just going to agree with you. I think if you're Chandler, you'd be happy to take that fight regardless. You've been wanting the fight for so long. I don't think you're going to, at this point, say, no, 155 or bust. And I think Chandler's a guy where he's also received some criticism for the cardio as well, or at least people have questioned it. It could be that if he doesn't have to do as much of a weight cut, I mean, he'll be carrying more weight, but maybe he could go a little bit further in the rounds. I think regardless, the fight would happen.
Yeah, I like that fight at 170. I mean, I think that when you put it at 170, a few more of the factors tipped slightly more in Conor's favor.
Yeah.
And I do think that at 170, he's going to be able to have enough speed to keep up with Chandler. And I mean, Conor does have good takedown defense. I feel like we always, I don't know, a lot of analysts always just make him sound like he has no ground game whatsoever, which isn't the case. I like that fight a lot because I think that Chandler, regardless of the weight class, is going to come forward. He's going to get right in your face. And that's kind of one of those go big or go home styles. And when you go big or go home, sometimes you go big and sometimes you go home, but he's always exciting to watch. And I think that level of aggression and pressure is what Conor likes to deal with because of his timing and his precision, his ability to like slide right out of range and still tag guys. And he would have a significant reach advantage over Chandler.
I know you mentioned Paddy before and how people are saying, oh, Paddy versus Conor. And I think we're pretty far away from that. I think we saw with Paddy's last fight, there's still some progression. And like you said, the difference in size and stuff. But I wonder, like, this past year has been another phenomenal year for Paddy in terms of his rise, although this last fight has kind of, in a lot of ways, been the beginning of his slump in some areas. And I'm just talking about perception and some of the things that were done in interviews and the way the fight went and his reaction after the fight. Not to him, as a fighter, because he still has a lot of exciting things about him. I wonder, though, when you think of 23, do you see it as a year, another big rise, another big year where Paddy rises? Or do you think this could be the beginning of the slump that a lot of fans are sort of kind of predicting is going to happen with him going up in competition? And also, perception-wise, obviously, he's still got a big support network where he's from. But some of the fans have soured a little bit after what they saw and heard leading into his last fight and that fight in general.
Yeah, I think he did himself a little bit of a disservice, not in how he fought. And he can't control what the judges do or don't do. But he's kind of got he's got a character, and I shouldn't say he's not playing a character because it really is, I think, who he is. But, you lean into certain aspects of your personality, and Paddy's done such a good job of being brash and confident and, Conor-ish, but at the same time, also having this really great component of, mental health and wanting to help people and giving back to the community. And, to have those things at the same time, I think it's a winning formula. But then when you have that moment where I feel like a lot of the audience wanted him to say, man, that was a close fight. I don't know if I won that fight or not. I'm glad I got it on the judges' scorecards. I'll have to go back and watch it. Jared's great. I think his reaction to it did him a little bit of a disservice. But in terms of what I think will happen to his trajectory next year, that's really going to depend on what he does in the gym, because now that he's beaten Jared Gordon, he's going to get tougher and tougher opponents, supposedly. He's got to go back and work on some of the things that Jared was able to exploit in that fight, because the reality is Jared is not a knockout artist, and he's a shorter guy with shorter arms, and he was still able to find Paddy quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure. Like he's got two battles, really. The battles are obviously on his skills for 2023, and then also the battles of public perception, because his stock really did tank right at the very end there. Speaking of battles, 2023 coming up around the corner. Let's make this the year of you don't battle with your rusty razor anymore. Make this the year of a freshly shaved sack. New balls, new you, and you're going to be doing it with our good friends at Manscaped, who provide the pound-for-pound greatest grooming tool in the world, the Lawnmower 4.0, with its ceramic blade, the skin-safe technology, the LED light, the waterproof features, and the wireless charging dock. And the Platinum Package 4.0 is the best way to start your new year. With Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, the Ultra Premium Body Wash, the Ultra Premium 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner, Ultra Premium deodorant, Crop Preserver anti-chafing ball deodorant, and the Crop Reviver ball spray toner that leaves you smelling nice and looking fresh. And then the free gifts, boxes, and shed travel bag. Best way to start the new year, isn't that right, Dennis?
That's right, man. And also you get your 20% off and free shipping now if you guys use the code word submission. Support the show and support yourself in 23 with your Manscaped purchases, and make sure to tag us on social media when you make them. We love to share the fact that your 23 is going to be smooth as silk. And what about our friends at MyBookie making everybody rich in 2022? Just looking back on some of the great odds and opportunities they've given our listeners to make some serious cash. But the fun doesn't stop right now. it continues on. What about the fact that you guys can still get your match deposit right now all the way up to the end of December? Use the code word submission and claim your deposit dollar for dollar all the way up to 1,000 bones. So many things to bet on. If it's not the World Cup, what about the NBA? And what about all the crazy sports that are happening right now from local to international? MyBookie is your place to lay down some skin in the game and make extra cash where it counts before we get into the new year. But anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie, make sure to use that code word submission, Cass.
That's right. Speaking of laying down, don't lay down for the trackers and the people that are trying to steal your precious details, your name, your address, your favorite Pornhub category, your credit card, all that kind of stuff. Keep everybody out of it, including your internet service provider. Don't leave those details to anybody. With NordVPN, block trackers the right way. And with some sneaky little cheeky hacks, you can get things cheaper as well, like we do. If you make your computer think you're in a different country or location, you get things cheaper. Pay-per-views are cheaper. Streaming services are cheaper. Make your computer think you're in Mexico. Now you got Mexican Netflix. Same exact titles. You're just paying less money. Dennis did it with the NBA League Pass. Didn't want to pay the full Australian rates. 2 seconds, knock, knock, who's there? Oh, I'm living in the Philippines or Indonesia. Now you get the NBA League Pass for a much cheaper rate. Same with flights, the same flights, they're the same location, different prices depending on what country your computer thinks you're from. So there's your fun little hack from the boys at Submission Radio and, of course, NordVPN. And then also, you unlock all sorts of other content from other places. Every time we want to try and watch great coverage from BT Sport, whether it's for MMA or for boxing, we can't because it says, the uploader hasn't made this available in your country. Quick and easy way around that. So your good friends at NordVPN. Also, there's no buffering or speed throttling when you watch it. So check. Everybody wins. Isn't that right, Dennis?
That's right, man. And I don't want to give out too many hints on this one, but I know we've got people out there, you or your partner, you love to watch those terrible Christmas movies that come out once a day and you just can't get to them here in Australia. Why not use NordVPN and impress your partner right now? You got your BAT, AMC, Hallmark, all going OG versions from the US, thanks to our friends at NordVPN, where you guys can sign up right now and get 30 days money back guarantee. That's right, 30 days free money back guarantee to try it today. And if you guys do sign up, you get a massive discount plus 4 months free. There's really no reason not to try it right now. Best app in the game, nordvpn.com/submission, or click the link in the description of this video. Get started today and change your life for the better thanks to Nord. But Laura, just switching up the setup here for a quick sec. I want to quickly bring up this next name because when looking at 2022, it's kind of it's just heartbreaking that we didn't see this next man sort of fight. And I'm talking, of course, about Jon Jones. I want to get this thought from you on this entire move to heavyweight. So far, we haven't actually seen Jon Jones fight. And a lot of fans feel like this move is in a lot of ways just a big mess. Initially, we thought he was going to leave light heavyweight, go to heavyweight, and that was going to create a lot of exciting fights for us and opportunities for Jon. Now we're still waiting for him to make the move and ultimately missed out on a few years out of his prime. What do you make of this move of him going from light heavyweight to heavyweight? And at this point, are you kind of thinking, well, maybe it could have just been better for him to stick around at light heavyweight, defend the title a few times, and at least we would have gotten a chance to see him fight. We would have gotten a chance for the division to maybe potentially get an opportunity to beat him.
As a fan, I would like to watch Jon Jones fight as often as possible. But I do think that there's something about the anticipation that has been built up because of him, because of his absence. And because of the move to heavyweight, there's a little bit of a feeling of a fresh start. I think that, what happened during his title reign at 205 is always going to be an asterisk for him, in terms of his GOAT status. It is more to some people, it is less to other people, but regardless, it's there. It's sort of this specter that, colors his entire incredible career. There's something about moving to heavyweight that would at least make that asterisk a little bit smaller. And if he could go on and have an incredible run at heavyweight and be just as great as he was at 205 at heavyweight, it feels the word that came to my mind, and I didn't even mean to use this, it feels clean. It feels new. You look at his frame, he's certainly at the height for heavyweight, walking around now at 255. Oh, I think he looks good. And the thing that always gave Jon an advantage at 205 was not just, I mean, he had an incredible skill set. He was so well-rounded before guys really were truly well-rounded, but it's his fight IQ. He's one of the smartest fighters that we've ever seen inside of the octagon in terms of his ability to deliver a strategy that was built before the fight even started. And to have that level of fight IQ in a division that's sort of known for slanging and banging, I could have a ton of success. I really do.
I almost feel like in some ways it's kind of saved his career because Jon Jones's biggest troubles have been outside the octagon. But like at the end of 205, like he wasn't looking as dominant. And I'd imagine if he did those next few title defenses, somebody beat him, and it's almost like the interest just wouldn't be as much there in the story and the narrative of Jon Jones. Whereas now it's like he's been on the sidelines and here we are talking about him and he hasn't even fought. And it's like people are still looking at him as the GOAT, and he may or may not be. We might find out very quickly, like, holy shit, that guy who wasn't doing as well at 205, that's translated at heavyweight. Or he might come in and get that clean start, like you mentioned, and destroy everybody and overtake as the GOAT. So I think in some ways it's done him favors. But obviously whether it's Stipe or Francis, people just want to see him at heavyweight. I am curious though regarding Francis. What are you expecting in 2023? We're kind of nearing the point where he, may or may not be a free agent. The clock's kind of ticking. It is getting kind of exciting because we're sort of at the end here. What do you think is going to happen?
Man, I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful because if I'm being honest with you, that is the fight in my mind. That is the fight for 2023 is Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou. I am still holding out hope. And, Dana made some indications in an interview not long ago that talks were progressing. I heard Francis Ngannou's manager kind of say the same thing. Now, what they say to the media, of course, can be completely different than what's going on behind the doors. And we all know that. But there are positive indications, at least, they appear to be positive. It has to happen. I am manifesting this fight because can you even imagine the spectacle, the level of fight it would be for Jon Jones to return after being away for so long, coming up to heavyweight? Can he do it again? And he's going to face the scariest guy in the division, his first fight at heavyweight. I mean, you really don't get a better setup than that in terms of, what it means to their respective careers, the technique matchup. I mean, all of it, the storylines, all of it, it makes for the perfect blockbuster fight. And I really hope that we get to see it.
Yeah, that's really the fight right there. And I think the Stipe fight is fun, but I think there's just so much on the line with this Francis fight. And like you said, matchup wise, that is the fight that fans want to see. And I think a lot of fans out there want to see how Jon Jones goes against someone with that knockout power of Francis, and that draws a lot of people to the fight to see what happens. I wonder, we've got Christmas coming up, Laura, and obviously your present to us is coming on the show to finish out the year. But if you could give yourself the ultimate Christmas present and make any fight a reality in 23 and something that's not already been put together, is there anything that stands out? What would it be?
Aside from Jones and Ngannou.
I was going to say, we just talked about the one that would really be my self. I'm going to go. I'm going to say Shavkat versus Khamzat toward the end of the year, though.
Yes.
I want Shavkat and Khamzat to both have at least a couple more fights before they have to fight each other. But if they can both continue to win and look so devastatingly dominant and just freakishly good, that I would love to see those two fight at some point toward the end of the year.
Okay. If you are also, Nick Diaz is now sort of talking and ramping up talks about a potential return, talking about even wanting, Israel Adesanya. What would you do with Israel? What would you do with Nick Diaz next year if you had to match him up with someone?
Listen, for guys like Nick, I like legacy type fights. I like old school versus old school type fights. I don't love these. I would not want to see him fight Izzy. And I'm not saying he couldn't, hold his own, but I think that, when we saw him come back last time, I don't know, that would be the way that I would want to finish it. I don't mean to be retiring the guy because he's such a legend, but if I'm being honest, I want Nick to go on and have a great life and enjoy himself beyond MMA and beyond fighting and beyond the UFC, because I think he deserves that.
I like the idea of this legacy fight, and Cesar Gracie was on earlier this year had said apparently he had like a messed up neck in that Robbie Lawler fight and got surgery on it afterwards.
Discs. Two herniated discs.
Yeah. And it's crazy because if you look at that fight knowing that, you're like, oh my God, how does this man do as well as he did? Yeah. But the UFC really needs to embrace the idea of warm-up fights for these guys. So I love the idea of a legacy fight. I also question middleweight for Nick Diaz, but I'd love to see what he looks like healthy. The good news is there's already big fights locked in for 23. We've got Islam versus Alex in Perth, which you're not going to be there. I can't believe you ditched us. Then there's Adesanya versus Pereira, the possible McGregor return. What are you looking forward to the most that's sort of been confirmed thus far?
Oh, Volk versus Makhachev, no doubt. Because I'll be honest with you, when you look at Islam's skill set and you look at the top of the lightweight division, there's definitely some fun fights there, fun fights that people would want to see, but there's nothing that like screams, oh, this guy is going to really test his skill set. And I genuinely do believe that Alex Volkanovski is going to test his skill set. I think that Alex moves differently than a lot of lightweights. He's going to be, just by virtue of being so short, but having such long arms, he's going to be a different body type than Islam's used to dealing with. And I mean, he's the number one pound for pound fighter in the world for a reason. And I love that matchup.
I guess one of the things, it's going to be fascinating because it's one of those fights where it's starting off the year in Australia. So I think a lot of people like kind of sleeping on it a little bit, but in a lot of ways, this is going to be the fight. People don't realize the legacies, the history that this is going to make. All right, let's finish out with this one, Laura, and we appreciate your time. We were talking about Khamzat. What fighter do you think is going to have a huge year in 23? There's Khamzat. He's pursuing the title. Pereira's trying to solidify his spot as the champion. Edwards is trying to do the same. We've got guys coming up in the division. What's the one name? It doesn't have to be a rising star, but right in there.
One, because I've got like three.
Say whoever you want. Go for it.
For me, the names that really just jump off the page are, and it's cool because they're from your region, but Jack Della Maddalena, I mean, has looked sensational thus far in the UFC, and we don't always see that level of results of guys coming off the Contender Series. They're usually young in their career, and they have typically a little bit of time in the UFC where it might be, win, lose for a little bit. Jack has been absolutely sensational. And then another Australian who, has the Scottish accent but lives in Las Vegas, Casey O'Neill.
Yeah.
Casey O'Neill. I feel like, with the knee surgery and her being out, maybe she's fallen off a little bit of the radar, and her last fight wasn't a finish. But before that, I mean, this woman, it's extraordinary. Her finishing percentage at women's flyweight is fantastic. She's mean. She's incredibly mean, and she's one of the nicest people that you'll ever meet in your entire life. So those are two of them. I mean, I'm always going to say Shavkat, so I got to throw him in there too.
All right, well, there it is. As we wrap up, Laura, I want to congratulate you on an incredible 2022. We can't wait to see what's in stuff for 23. You mentioned it earlier in the interview. You got some big plans. As we wrap up, what do people need to watch out for in 23? What can you reveal with us?
I can't reveal anything specific, but you know what? I think Q1 is going to be a good quarter for me. I think it's going to be a really good quarter.
Something's cooking, guys. Make sure to follow Laura at Laura Sanko _Sanko on social media so we can find out what's cooking. Can't wait to see what this is. Secrets and surprises is what Submission Radio runs on. So can't wait to see what it is. Laura, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and thank you so much for joining us onto Submission Radio.
And thank you guys for all that you do for the sport. Genuinely, you're one of the places when I'm doing homework on a particular matchup. You're one of the places that I go right off the bat because your content is so high level and great guests, and it's fun. You get people to, open up in a way that they don't to other media outlets. So, I mean, thank you guys for a great 2022 as well. You're awesome.
Thank you so much. Hey, that means a lot for a couple of guys doing this from home. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Laura. And always fun chatting with you. We'll let you go. Thanks so much for jumping on with us.
Have a great year.